There is no useless experience, as read by the author. Lesson 6. Curb your appetite and master your body. World marathon champion Eliud Kipchoge is a master of the track, but he is also a great source of inspiration. There is a famous video of him that has made the rounds with one poignant quote: "Only the disciplined ones are free. If you aren't disciplined, you're a slave to your moods. You're a slave to your passions." Oh, how difficult this is. I have had the worst experiences with indiscipline in many areas of my life. Food has been a great source of indiscipline and pain in my life, an affinity to eating without control sometimes. Even when there has been control, I have found ways to sneak out, to indulge in places where I clearly knew I was overeating. As a result, I have ballooned. I have made mention of my struggle with weight and how I am trying not to be a slave to my passions in another chapter. Another weakness had been the alcohol. There were only 2 reasons I would ever stop drinking in the past. One would be when the booze was finished. The other would be when my money was finished. And there were 2 ways about it. The amount of pain that indiscipline caused me cannot be fully contained in this book. I have been in altercations and accidents I should never have been in. I have lost money, possessions, relationships, and even opportunities because of my lack of self-control. When Eliud talks about slavery, that is exactly the kind of slavery that indiscipline brings. It is not pretty at all. This is how costly it can be. In 2001, while still in the US, my girlfriend and I were blessed with a daughter. It was a much unexpected happening, as I was not prepared to be a father and had no idea of what it would entail. I kept it a secret from many of my friends, and only my sister knew about it. My daughter's mother was an American who didn't know any better and was also as confused as I was because our relationship wasn't serious. It was a result of the passion of sex and lust. We had met in a club and I remember going home with her, but I cannot remember our first night together. Such was the extent of my drunken stupor. The baby was born and I became a dad. We began co-parenting as we didn't live together. Shortly after her first birthday, I threw a party to celebrate. There was a lot of alcohol involved, and as was the case with most parties involving toddlers, it had more to do with the excuse of indulging in our own social vices rather than celebrating the child. My daughter's mother went to work later that afternoon, leaving me still drinking, with a toddler in the house. It was the beginning of a horror story with epic ramifications. The child walked about, stumbled on leftover chicken lying about, began eating it and choked on a bone. I was extremely delirious and only came to find out almost half an hour later when the baby had already turned blue-black. I called the paramedics in a rush, but as it turned out, they came only to confirm the death of this baby. It's a true reality of lack of discipline in my personal life. And needless to say, although her mom and I tried to put up a united front and bury the baby together, our relationship eventually tanked, and she never forgave me for being so careless. My pain was compounded by the secrecy of the child, and the fact that in her short existence I did not have the decency to acknowledge her publicly. Denise, her mother, did not let me forget that fact after the interment, and that the only people who were at the burial were Denise, her siblings, and her mom, and my sister and I. Evidently, the presence of only my sister and me was a clear display of the lack of acceptance of the child on my part. The truth was that, at the time, I was originally afraid of being a father, and what it would have meant at that time with a woman I was never intending to marry. In my cowardice, I behaved like a fool, even when I became one and ultimately lost the baby. It was my fault, and only my fault. It is a memory that I have tucked away in the farthest recesses of my mind. It is, however, impossible to forget, though not for want of trying, but because there was a human being involved. Many other times, I find myself sometimes reflecting on what could have been. I had lacked the discipline to be a responsible parent. It was a painful, painful lesson. The lesson of being a responsible parent is the one lesson that has to be a constant, and not just in food or alcohol. In discipline manifests in other areas too, like temper tantrums, lack of commitment, dishonesty, selfishness, and the list goes on. The Bible in Galatians 5:22 talks about the fruits of the Spirit, listing them as love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. I like to think that self-control is put last because even if you have all these others and have no self-control, it can bring everything to a screeching halt. Curb your appetites, master your body, and as Eliud Kipchoge says, become truly free by being disciplined.